Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast for November 16th, 2023. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal, but not for long, Mark, as I will be departing imminently for the UK, where I will be doing a number of different meetings and attending the European Call Center Awards that will be happening in London on November 21st. It's certainly a chance to break out the annual tuxedo and catch up with a lot of old friends.
Well, I know that I will certainly be in the UK during November, but I don't quite know my dates for travel yet. So hopefully we can cross over. Let's see.
That would be wonderful. That would be absolutely wonderful. But, talking about travel, today we are in an amazing position because when it comes to different offshore locations, one of the things that I have really been interested in over the course of the past little bit has been this concept about emerging locations. And when it comes to emerging locations, from an Asia Pacific standpoint, probably the one spot that seems to be popping up more often than not is Fiji. And with that in mind, I had the opportunity of speaking with, quite frankly, a very revolutionary personality in our space, Sagufta Janif, who is the executive director of Outsource Fiji. And we had a long discussion a little bit about why Fiji has come onto the map when it comes to BPO delivery. What are some of the key elements around BPO that would probably, I guess you could say, exemplify or that would be emblematic of the Fiji value proposition, and got a bit of an idea as well about the different locations that Fiji is probably primarily aiming at serving, most notably the Australia and the New Zealand geographies. So certainly a chance to get a snapshot or look in the window when it comes to very much a country that I don't think has traditionally been one of the more well-known destinations, but is certainly disrupting to the point where a lot of people are talking about it in the English language world.
Yeah, and I know that over the years we've seen companies like MindPearl doing stuff out in Fiji, and I've talked to some agents here in Brazil that were contacted and recruited to go out to Fiji. So some, so it's not even just the sort of indigenous staff that are available. They're sort of looking around for people with BPO experience to come out and enjoy the Fiji lifestyle as well.
This is it. And, there's the opportunity to recruit new talent, people who'd be very willing to come and work in Fiji. There's also the fact that Fiji aligns quite nicely with a lot of different time zones around the world. Obviously, from a distance standpoint, it can be considered somewhat of a nearshore destination for the ANZ enterprise community, as well as outsourcers that decide that they're going to set themselves up there. But I think one of the things that struck me in my chat with Sagufta was the fact that they're not looking to compete against India or the Philippines. They know very well where their bread is buttered as a high-value niche location, sort of in the same spirit that you would classify Jamaica, if I was to make a comparison. But it definitely one of the more interesting destination-driven CX files I've had the chance to moderate in a while. So let's go to our chat with Sagufta to find out a little bit more about Outsource Fiji and the Fiji outsourcing value proposition. The CX Files this week welcomes one of our international guests, and we're so excited to do so. Joining me now from Suva in Fiji is Sagufta Janif, who is the Executive Director of Outsource Fiji. So, Sagufta, welcome to the show, and we are just so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Peter, for the opportunity, and I'm so glad to be here. Bula, everyone.
It is really a treat for us. And I'll tell you why, Sagufta, because we have not had the opportunity as a podcast to examine Fiji in any great detail. Now, it has been on the radar for a little bit, but this is going to be a great chance for all of us to hear a little bit more about what's going down in Fiji, and hearing it, in this case, from somebody who's clearly in the know. So as maybe a starting point, would you be able to talk a little bit about Outsource Fiji? Maybe talk about the organization, what your mandate and what the objectives are of Outsource Fiji. That'll be a great initial point of departure for us today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, Outsource Fiji was previously known as the Business Process Outsourcing Council, and this was formed as an industry body to create an inclusive environment for our operators and to create a sustainable environment so they can grow in Fiji, so the sector can grow in Fiji. And then later on, what we realized that it was just not exclusive to business process outsourcing, because we had, knowledge process outsourcing service providers. We had some ITOs based in it. So we had some shared services providers, some GBS hubs in it as well. So we decided to have an overarching brand, which is Outsource Fiji, which is now truly an industry body. And we have four pillars, four main pillars, which is to market Fiji, one, which is the first one, to market Fiji as an outsourcing destination. Second is to protect our people, to protect our businesses that are here in Fiji. The third one is to enable an inclusive environment, like I mentioned, to work on policies and other aspects so we can enable our people and the businesses that are operating here in Fiji as well through the industry body. And the last one is to overall protect the industry. So protect and grow the industry. So that is essentially what our mandate is and what we are doing as an industry body. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Sagufta, as I think a little bit about Fiji, the images that would immediately come to mind would be a vacation destination, somewhere with gorgeous beaches, palm trees, somewhere that people would want to spend a lot of leisure time. But it's funny because over the course of the past couple of years, I've been picking up more and more chatter about Fiji as a BPO or a CX delivery destination. And I'd really be curious from yourself if you could talk to us a little bit about what's driving this interest. Why is it not? It's not just me, by the way. It's a lot of people from the CX analyst or influencer world that are starting to find out a little bit more about the brands and the BPOs that are servicing those brands that are working out of Fiji. Where is this coming from?
That's a brilliant question. And I think this all happened during the pandemic. So pre-pandemic, the industry has been here since the year 2000. If you know about ANZ Bank, so they set up their Pacific operations here in Fiji. And then that quickly caught on traction with other service providers and specifically BPO. So we had Mindpearl, the likes of Mindpearl and the likes of Senecom sort of joining in as well after 2009. And pre-pandemic, we were at around 2,000 people working, 2 to 3,000 people working in this industry. During pandemic and post-pandemic, we're now at around about 8,000 people in the industry. So that's a massive growth. And that happened, Peter, because one thing, the competing markets, I wouldn't say competing markets, but the other markets that provided outsourcing services to businesses, say in Australia, which is our predominant sort of major market because of our distance and the time zone friendliness and of course cultural affinity, those aspects, what had happened was most of the businesses in Australia were facing difficulties in continuing their business operations whilst they were outsourcing to these other locations. And what happened in Fiji was the complete opposite, because our government at the time announced the industry as an essential service provider. So most of our operators continued to provide services to their clients. And what had happened and what led to the growth was that initially these businesses just outsourced a subset of their operations to Fiji just for risk diversification purposes. And then they realized the quality of the service offerings that our agents had to offer. And that sort of rapidly changed their mindset and their perspective about Fiji being an outsourcing destination. So some of them now have their primary operations coming out of Fiji, and then they have their secondary operations outside of Fiji. So that is, I guess, how we build traction and how it grew. And of course, having a brand such as the Outsource Fiji brand actively going out and promoting Fiji as an outsourcing destination, and with a lot of push and support from the government, we had been able to secure more clientele, more investors in Fiji. There's a lot of investor-friendly incentives that we have available. There's a lot of tax incentives that Fiji has, the government has to offer. There's also a customs duty waiver. And there are a few other benefits such as education education and training that that BPOs and operators can take part in. So I think all of that sort of working together and creating that conducive environment for business growth, that has really definitely led to our growth.
I think this is a fantastic story, and I didn't realize that we're talking about one that does have some longevity. I mean, year 2000 was, well, nearly 24 years ago, which is kind of frightening when you think about it. But equally speaking, that level of growth since the pandemic, it really speaks volumes. And I'm looking at some of the names that you've mentioned in terms of the enterprises and the BPO supporting them that are based in Fiji. These are pretty blue chip names for anybody who's been around the space for a while. Now, you mentioned as well Australia being one of the primary demand markets for services from Fiji. Every year, Ryan Strategic Advisory conducts a survey of roughly 700 enterprise CX decision makers from around the world, some of the key demand markets. What was interesting for me this year was that we included Fiji in our list of different offshore and nearshore destinations to really suss out the favorability levels. And something that struck me immediately was that beyond Australia, where Fiji certainly does have a very high level of resonance, it also was seen quite favorably in the United Kingdom, the USA, and Canada, so the main English-speaking markets. Now, Sagufta, you travel the world and you meet buyers and you meet outsourcers from some of these more far off demand markets. What's the reception Fiji is getting in the commercial capitals of the United States, of Canada, of the UK, of Ireland?
Definitely, and that's another brilliant question, Ryan. Peter. So I think one of the main things is, of course, you mentioned it. It's English speaking. The fluency that we have, the neutral accents that we have, and of course the talented workforce and the qualified workforce. So most of our, well, I guess almost all of our agents have a degree level qualification. So, and then we have 3 universities spread across Fiji as well. So for a smaller population, having 3 universities really speaks volumes about our capabilities and the skills that we have. And Outsource Fiji also conducts a lot of training programs and a lot of things that we can upskill our talent. That's one. So we have a talented, of course, access to a talented workforce. And the second thing is the connectivity that we have, the infrastructure that we have. So we are connected to the Southern Cross cable that helps us connect to the rest of the world. And the other aspect, of course, is although our time zones are different from the UK and the USA markets, but we are able to offer an overnight processing. And because we have a time zone advantage, because we wake up early, we are 10 to 12 hours ahead from these markets. So our capabilities for overnight processing is great. And we have some big brands like Hertz, for example, their UK operations is done out of Fiji as well. We have the likes of KPMG, we have the likes of PwC, Ernst & Young, these big brands who are already in Fiji and who are experiencing a lot of tremendous growth in terms of the skills that they have, in terms of the capabilities that they have through our people. So I think those are some of the main factors that can definitely attract those international markets. And now we have direct flights from the USA. We have direct flights from Canada as well. So that adds as an advantage, and hopefully UK soon if we can.
That's going to be a long flight.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. That connectivity is so important, that direct connection. And as somebody like yourself who travels a fair amount, I think that it's very clear executives, whether it's BPO executives or their clients, really want to limit the number of flights they actually have to do. I keep hearing, I want to avoid a 2-hop destination. I totally understand. When you're talking about a destination like Fiji and you're talking about the time zone alignment, just for the sake of our listeners, it's just after 5 p.m. here in Montreal, and where you are, I believe it's 9:15. So from a Canadian perspective, the time zone alignment is actually quite good, because as you're starting your day, as your agents are starting their day, we're coming into early evening. and you think a little bit about how the frontline agents will be considering their own workday. Well, by the time they finished, maybe after 7-8 hours, probably that's when most people in North America will be looking to hit the sack, or will be at the very least switching on Netflix.
Exactly, and that's one of the main advantages that we have, and that's working really well in our favor as well. Because some of the businesses that are outsourcing to Fiji, and they're using the nighttime operations, they have the follow the sun model, and Fiji plays really well in that space if we're looking at nighttime operations as well, and serving their customer base and the client base 24/7. So that is something that we are really extremely proud of as a destination.
And you have every reason to be proud of it. Let's talk about destinations. Some of the destinations that Fiji might be coming up against from a competitive standpoint. Obviously, you're one of the newer kids on the block, and sorry, I have to go back and use a reference from 1980s music. It's a bit of a habit of mine. But when we're thinking a little bit about Fiji and the willingness of outsourcers and their clients to consider it, obviously you've got some pretty stiff competition out there from a geographic perspective. Thinking about the likes of the Philippines, of India, Australia, South Africa, that's another one. What would you say makes Fiji stand out against some of these longer legacy players that are in the space, that are servicing the Australias, that are servicing New Zealand, North America, the United Kingdom, etc.?
Yep. I mean, there's a few things here at play. Specifically, if we look at markets, so if we look at Australia, if we look in New Zealand, Fiji plays well in that nearshore sort of destination. Cutting out the long haul flights, coming in, doing business, and maybe staying a day or two for a vacation instead of being on flights. So those are some of the things. And there's a lot of cultural affinity. There's a lot of geographical knowledge that our agents have, because we have been serving the Australian, New Zealand clients in our tourism industry for decades now, and we know them. We live with them. The love for rugby, it's all there. So that's one. So it really depends on the markets that we are going to, and like I said, for the UK US markets, we have the overnight processing advantage as well. But we do recognize that these are more larger destinations, and they might have a dense population. But what our advantage here is, and what we are promoting Fiji is as a risk diversification location. Now, you can have your major operations in Philippines, you can have your major operations in South Africa, but to diversify your risks, and to just ensure that risk management aspect, you can have a subset of your office here in Fiji as well. And that's how we are marketing and promoting. So we're not just saying that, we're better than these destinations, but we are saying that we can work collaboratively with your teams across the globe, and then you have an extension to your office here in Fiji. So that is how we are going about and promoting Fiji as an outsourcing destination. And there's a certain level of quality that our agents have to offer, especially when we look at English speaking, the neutral accents, and the educated workforce. So that is there as well. And most of our BPOs purely are very passionate and people driven, and they really want to work with partners, with companies that also have people aspects or people values within them as well. So I think that really sets us apart as an outsourcing destination.
That's really exciting. And I loved what you emphasized there around quality. And I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said that you're not trying to be better than any destination, but complementary. As far as I'm concerned, the one-upmanship that we saw maybe 10, 15 years ago between different offshore locations is long since gone. The key is diversification. The key is spreading that risk. And I think we can all say that there are some destinations that are a little bit more inherently risky than others, which is why a spot like Fiji might do extremely well for organizations that are looking to try and find somewhere that's got a level of stability, sophistication, and, as you say, a very high level of talent that are going to be on the front lines. So if I'm to ask you, Sagufta, a little bit about maybe some of the challenges that you've encountered marketing Fiji to the prospective buying markets. What would be maybe the one or two that would stand out, perhaps in terms of conceptions or misconceptions, et cetera?
Yeah, I think when we started off the conversation and you mentioned that Fiji has always been considered as a tourism destination, I think that branding is sort of overpowering the current active workforce that we have in Fiji. So yes, we recognize that we are an amazing, beautiful tourism destination, but we also have a very young active workforce, quality driven, efficiency and everything that we have to offer as a business destination. So we have that now, and what we are trying to build is the momentum and the branding around Fiji as an outsourcing destination. So I think that's been one, because when you think about tourism, you always think about laid back culture. You always think about, okay, is the productivity levels going to be high? What is the scenario that's going to be when I outsource my operations to Fiji? So that's the, I guess that's the conversation that we're trying to have with the CX leaders that we engage in. And when we go to these events and we have these conversations, we try to advocate and promote that. And the second thing is, of course, the location itself, and the flight times for our other destinations like the UK, like USA even. So we have to really advocate that these are the opportunities that you have available. And if it's a digital landscape now, people during COVID, we have realized that we can completely work remotely and we can still have that level of efficiency and productivity. And we have really well-groomed trainers available here in Fiji who can, just come to your destination, get the trainings needed, and then they can come in and train the people here. So I feel like it's the way that we work around those hurdles. That's something that we are trying to continuously push. And I think another thing is that our size as a population, so that often comes into conversation that, hey, you guys are just below 1 million, how will you service the magnitude of markets? So, and that's where we say, talk about the risk diversification piece, that we're not saying bring your 2,000 or 3,000 people to Fiji, but you can outsource a subset of your operations to Fiji, and that is what we're trying to do. And of course, showing all these names that are already in Fiji. So just creating more awareness around it, more case studies around how these businesses, these larger brands have set up in Fiji and the level of growth that they're experiencing. So those are some of the conversations that we have. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, last question. If somebody wants to find out more about Fiji and the opportunity for outsourcing, whether it's CX, back office, or IT, how do they get in touch with you?
Great. So you can we're very active on our socials. So you can come by on our page on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and then we can drop in our email address as well. So it's Sagufta, my first name, .janif@outsourcefiji.com. And then we have a corporate email address, which is corporate@outsourcefiji.com. So you can reach out to us via our email, and you can also add me on LinkedIn and message me. I'm always there to help and assist.
Well, this is fantastic. Thank you very much for taking some time, Sagufta, at the start of your day. I know that this is probably going to be a topic that's going to resonate with a lot of outsourcers that listen to our podcast, as well as the buying community. So we wish you well, and we wish you a tremendous amount of luck as you look to try and market Fiji around the world.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for the opportunity. Vinaka.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.